Well, the system is broken beyond repair now. We very, very likely will see a civil war in the United States, and hopefully we don't get dragged into it.
Hello and welcome. This is Paul Sandhu coming to you with another episode of Wake Up and Live Radio. It's Tuesday, June the 3rd, 2014, and my guest today will be Rob Kirby. Rob is a forensic economic and analyst, that's quite a mouthful, of forensic economic analyst, and his website is kirbyanalytics.com. Hello, Rob. Welcome to the program.
Nice to be with you, Paul, and nice to make the acquaintance.
Excellent. Same here. Since this is the first time you've appeared in my program, would you please introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a little bit about your background and your area of expertise?
Sure. My background is, I guess, academically, an economics degree at York University in Toronto. And when I finished my studies at York University, I went to work on Bay Street in Toronto, and I was working for an interdealer broker. And our firm were brokers of foreign exchange and interest rate products, including Canadian and U.S. money market and Canadian and U.S. interest rate derivatives, which is where I spent the bulk of my 15 years on Bay Street applying those trades in bonds, interest rate swaps, forward rate agreements, so the gamut of interest rate products, Paul. And subsequent to being on Bay Street, I spent 4 years in the retail investment advisors space, a couple years with Scotia McLeod, a couple years with Investors Group. So I've sort of seen the investment landscape from two angles, institutionally as an interdealer broker, and on the retail level, which is a completely different world, and they are two worlds unto themselves, the institutional versus the retail space. So that's sort of my call it working for other people part of my life. And for the last probably 12 years now, I've been writing about markets, basically using the knowledge that I gained from having been in the institutional and retail space, writing about financial markets as I see them. And when you mentioned the term forensic economics, what I do is I use my knowledge of the products that I was engaged in trading to sort of reverse engineer events today, because the instruments that I traded and that I was involved with some of them have been used certainly in very nefarious fashion by what I'm going to say is a cabal of international bankers to basically impose a price control grid in strategic areas in the market. That's why we have zero interest rates. They've utilized these products in copious amounts to basically put their zero interest rate policy in place in the United States. So that's a bit of a mouthful, but that's sort of the elevator speech of my life in financial markets.
Excellent. Now, just for people, because a lot of our audience is in the States and even worldwide, like for those who don't know, Bay Street is equivalent to Wall Street in New York. And Toronto, as a matter of fact, is a very major financial center in the world, I would say, these days. It's not a small place as far as money and finance is concerned. So having worked there, you of course have the knowledge of inner workings that most of us lay people on the outside will never get to see. So what I gather then, Rob, is that like a forensics expert, you revisit financial scenes of high crimes and felonies and piece together the crimes of the bankers and their henchmen. There seems to have been no shortage of such blatant criminal activity prior to the so-called great financial crisis that began back in 2007, which were the... And so what I wanted to talk to you is if you can perhaps talk about some of the real causes of this so-called crisis and the solutions or so-called solutions that the powers that be have implemented and to let us know your conclusion of whether anything actually has been resolved and whether checks and balances have been put in place to prevent similar future catastrophes such as the Lehman failure.
Yeah. Well, the Lehman failure was certainly a big point on the charts in terms of progression towards economic turmoil or financial turmoil in the international markets. But the reality, Paul, I think the real roots of the financial crisis are pre-Lehman, and they really have their roots in, I'm going to say, Bear Stearns, but it probably even the real root cause comes before Bear Stearns even, and the real root cause was when U.S. regulators working hand in glove with the banks rated subprime mortgages, which were really the worst type of junk securities on the planet. They conspired with the regular the ratings agencies, and the banks conspired to rate the toxic subprime loans as AAA, because what really kicked off the financial crisis in 2007 was when Bear Stearns had some hedge funds that owned vast amounts of these toxic subprime mortgages, and mind you, all rated AAA. And the first time in the history of credit markets, AAA paper failed. That's what brought on the demise of Bear Stearns. And when AAA paper failed for the first time in history, our credit markets froze up. The commercial paper markets. Understand, mortgage-backed securities are paper that are traded in the marketplace between banks. And when AAA mortgage paper failed, the whole commercial paper market froze up, which meant corporations basically were cut off from financing their day-to-day activities. And that was in the summer of 2007, specifically in August, is when the markets froze up. And when credit markets freeze up like this, banks in the interbank market stopped lending to one another. And this caused panic on the part of the U.S. Treasury and on the part of the Federal Reserve, because the dollar system was literally was brought to a standstill. And the way that they responded to try and jolt the system back to life, they figured that they would drop interest rates, and it was in August of 2007 that we saw rates in a matter of a day or 2 days. We saw short-term rates, specifically like a 3-month benchmark rate, and the 3-month T-bill rates dropped by something like 200 basis points in 2 days, from 5 down to 3% initially. And the way this was affected, it was during this dramatic drop in rates when LIBOR was first viewed as being broken, because it was in the fall of 2007 that the first reports about LIBOR being broken were starting to appear in major media, television and newspaper. And the whole process of how LIBOR broke or appeared to be broken was the fact that banking institutions didn't want to lend money because there was a credit crisis, because nobody knew who was a good credit anymore, because as I said earlier, AAA paper had failed. And when banks become concerned about their loan portfolios, they tend not to lend money. So this was reflected with 3-month Eurodollar futures, which are a proxy for 3-month LIBOR, initially started to back up in the summer of 2007. And with Eurodollar rates backing up, or LIBOR rates backing up, and the U.S. government doing interest rate derivative trades with the banks, it compelled the banks to hedge these interest rate derivative trades. The banks became captive buyers of short-dated U.S. government securities. So you had the Eurodollar futures backing up, and you had a severe rally occurring in the T-bill rates. This caused something called the TED spread, and the TED spread is the difference between the 3-month Eurodollar future and the 3-month T-bill expressed in basis points. And it normally trades in a very tight range of around 25 basis points. But what happened when LIBOR appeared broken, the T-bill rates, which the banks were buying, the 3-month T-bills, they were rallying like crazy as the U.S. Treasury continued to do more and more of an interest rate derivative trade called an FRA, and the TED spread blew out. The TED spread blowing out, it was LIBOR being broken. That's how, when people say the LIBOR was broken, it's the TED spread. It blew out to 400 points or 300 points at one point. And this is the manifestation of banks not wanting to lend money, while the U.S. Treasury is forcing banks to buy T-bills, and that's why and how LIBOR broke. It was a contrivance by the U.S. Treasury, and when the U.S. Treasury acts in the derivatives markets, they use the New York Federal Reserve trading desk as their broker. So the line of these trades was the U.S. Treasury, specifically within the Treasury, the Exchange Stabilization Fund, conducting these open market operations using the New York Fed as a broker, and the expression of U.S. monetary policy at that point in time was being executed through the trading desks of J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Citibank, Morgan Stanley. These are the guys with the, and Bank of America. These are the guys with the 50 trillion plus derivatives books, and these are the people that basically where U.S. monetary policy gets expressed. And I mean, this is all well and good, except what it means is that there's 5 players, at the table who know what U.S. monetary policy is before anyone else. Because what I'm really speaking of here is that J.P. Morgan knew rates were going to zero before anybody else knew. And when you have that kind of knowledge, you're going to do things like front run the trade. You may be executing the Treasury's business, but you're going to strap on some for yourself. And it's the ultimate insider trading, and it was happening in spades. Anyway, that's what I see as the root cause of our of our financial crisis. So I mean, you could say it's the mortgage. It's really the failure was that we had this garbage to begin with. We had garbage securities rated AAA.
I think these are Rob, these mortgage-backed securities. I think they should call them insecurities, which would be probably more accurate.
Well, Paul, you make a good point, but the real issue is a properly rated mortgage-backed security is a very useful and a very good product. It's just when you don't take your worst credits and combine them all into put them all under a big umbrella and suddenly end up with AAA.
No, I agree with you. Yes, when back in the 80s when there was a 25% down payment requirement, etc., then those mortgage-backed securities would have been a good risk. But
Yes.
but the way they changed it, zero down, and not even zero, they were giving 110% of inflated value properties in mortgages. Then obviously that is a risky venture, and everybody that was involved in it must have known that, which is what makes this.
Well, Paul, they were doing what they called ninja loans.
Right.
No job, no income. And I mean, if you're gonna lend money to a person who wants to buy a piece of property, and and it's a complete speculation, and they have no job and they no income, you have no business. You have no business giving them the loan. But then to compound that, to then turn around and take that mortgage and package it up with similar mortgages and put a AAA rating on it is absolutely criminal.
So
It's fraud.
that's a good word that you use is criminal, but as far as I know, none of these have ever been the people that were involved in this, including the ratings agencies. None of them have been charged with any kind of criminal activity. And has this now stopped? And is everything being done above board nowadays?
Well, listen, the notion that none of these ratings agencies have ever been criminally charged sort of reinforces the notion that people can do this and get away with it.
Right,
I
right,
mean,
right.
it's a disgrace. It's
Uh,
a break. It's a breakdown. It's a complete breakdown in the rule of law.
I heard on Max Kaiser yesterday about Mark Carney said that it's not jailing these bankers would not really solve the problem. That the problem would continue. So what he is signaling is, hey guys, keep on doing what you're doing. There'll be no repercussions.
Yeah, I don't really have anything pleasant or nice to say about Mark Carney at all. My feeling is he was one of the real regulators that had a catbird seat overseeing a whole pile of this, or was in a position, certainly as the governor of the Bank of Canada, to certainly use his good offices to draw attention to this, and to hopefully maybe put out the fire before it burned the house down. So
But he
for him to.
he added fuel to the fire from what I have seen.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. But by tacitly saying it's okay. He never singled these people out. He knew what was going on. No, these people all today want to say that they didn't know, or when the revelations are made of what really occurred, the people that were in a position to make things different, they want to walk away from it. Well, they're wearing it now. You can't when you're that derelict and that negligent, you can't walk away from it. And I'm not blaming it all on Mark Carney. All I'm saying is this was a man who was in a position of power. He was in a position of authority. He certainly knew what was going on. The guy had a career before he got into public service, he had a career with Goldman Sachs. So I mean, he knew what was going on, and he didn't say anything. He never spoke up. And now for him to say that though there's nothing he could have done, and everything's fine and well, that doesn't sit. It doesn't fly. That dog doesn't hunt.
This is a little bit of an aside, but I think he oversaw the largest, in my opinion, real estate bubble ever in history, which is the Canadian real estate market. Would you, or especially in Toronto and Vancouver, it's probably bigger than anything we saw in the States. Would you agree?
Well, I would agree that interest rate levels at zero have absolutely caused our real estate markets to go to heights that nobody would have believed. I don't think 15 years ago that we could ever attain the levels that we're at today. But
And they don't
it's all
seem
a
to be going. I mean, it doesn't seem to be stopping. It seems to keep on going up and up, and this really
well,
amazes me.
yeah. Well, this is one of the problems, Paul. When you have zero interest rates and you make money free, it causes all kinds of malinvestment. People make ridiculous asset allocation choices when money is interest rates are at zero. And it's not just the housing market. It's also big. It's encouraged governments to spend money on programs and on spending on all kinds of things that we have no business spending tax dollars on. But the only reason they're doing it is they can finance all this stuff at zero. And I mean, if interest rates ever do go up, which I believe they never will, and I've been a proponent now for the last 7 or 8 years, and I'll tell you, I was a lone ranger saying that rates were going to go down because anybody who was anybody talking about interest rates kept telling me how rates were going to back up due to the economic crisis. I said, you're wrong. They're not going to go up. They're going to go down. They're going to be forced down. And you see, and the reason I knew that, I understood that the governments had the means to do it, and there was no doubt in my mind that they would do it, and that's exactly what they've done. And for the last 2 or 3 years, everybody's been talking about how inevitable it is that rates were going to rise. Well, guess what? They're not going to rise. They're not. Interest rates are not going to rise until the current system falls, and then and then we're going to have a real mess on our hands. Sorry, Paul.
No, that's fine. So let's move on and talk about that. So what you are then saying is you have explained the roots of this crisis, which of course the I guess 2007 Bear Stearns Lehman, they were just when the match was lit, but actually the firewood was piled high long before then. Now, what you're saying is that you foresee then that the system is actually on a path that it has to fail at some point in time, because when you talk about these interest rates being kept at zero, malinvestments, I read today that in Europe they're considering negative interest rates. So it to me it seems like, I'm just a lay person, and to me it seems it just cannot continue. So there has to be an end game. And what's your view on that?
Well, the financial system today, Paul, in my view, is a slow motion train wreck. We are witnessing the undoing of the system in front of us, and it's happening in slow motion, and which is why a lot of people maybe don't see it for what it really is. It's an act. It's a crime scene. It's a train wreck. But it's just that it's going in slow motion, so a lot of people don't realize that we're in the middle of a 50 car pileup, and this is what has been occurring. This, I mean, it's expressing itself all over the world in different ways. We've seen problems in Cyprus, we've seen problems in Greece, we've seen problems in Italy, we've seen problems in Spain. We've seen problems in Iceland. We've seen problems in Ireland, and I mean, so far, it seems like the problems have been, from a North American perspective, a lot of the problems have been sort of away from us or on distant shores. But we're not immune. We're not immune to the same problems that these other places are right now. I mean, the province that you and I are both in, Ontario. Their finances are a complete mess, and they don't really look to be getting them sorted out in any hurry going forward. And I mean, Ontario has as a province has I think per capita debt now rivaling California. And I mean, the state of government finances around the world are all terrible. They're absolutely terrible.
No, that
and.
Sorry, this, I kind of laugh, but you know what? This is a question that I had, and it's a serious question, Rob. We're talking about Ontario here, and I've been here for, since I was here in the in the 80s and also in the 90s, and I saw some recessions, Oshawa, the GM plants being, a lot of people being laid off and all that, housing market down. And then for the past 20 or so years, beginning in the mid-90s, and we're almost 20 years into this, we saw the biggest boom that I have ever seen in Canada, okay? If you go downtown Toronto, there's been these condo buildings have been sprouting like mushrooms everywhere. All this explosive growth has been going on. And I'm thinking to myself, this is the best time I've ever seen. So the government coffers must be full of money, just from all the development fees and everything else. Yet you're telling me that all the debt levels are going up. So what has been happening to all this massive amounts of, money that just supposedly should have come into the government coffers? What the heck have they done with it?
Oh, it's been a spending orgy, Paul. I mean, and the amount of building that you cite in Toronto is very accurate. I was downtown on the weekend, and from one vantage point, I counted 37 cranes, poking up on the skyline from one vantage point. 37 cranes. You know, yeah, it is insane because we had periods of 4 and 5 years back in the late 70s or early 80s when there wasn't one crane on the skyline in Toronto. And to be able to see 37, and that's just from one vantage point. So I'm not saying there's only 37 cranes. I'm saying from one vantage point you can see 37. And I mean, and then you drive 5 miles in a different direction, and you see another group of 37. And so it's been this, but this speaks back to the concept of malinvestment that's brought on by zero interest rates. When you make money free, or when there's no cost to borrowing money, people will overbuild. It's look at animal populations. When you have an excess of food, animals will multiply until there's a thing called colony collapse disorder. Like they will literally over multiply to the point where the system can no longer feed them, and then it collapses. This is the sort of situation that these financial engineering clowns have put humanity in by driving rates to zero. They're setting us up for something absolutely tragic, which will come.
You use the term setting us up. So then, in your opinion, this is all that has been going on and is going on. It is something that is being orchestrated. Somebody is actually pulling the strings for a desired outcome. So
Yes.
what would you say that as far as who are the folks that are pulling the strings, and what is
Well,
this?
what
What
we're
is the outcome?
well, what we're witnessing, Paul, is the fruits of globalism. And the globalists are people who have very low regard for humanity, and the globalists are have a firm grip on the global economy. And if people want to know who the globalists are,
Can I interrupt
well,
you one second,
all
Rob, please? You said they have a firm grip on the global economy. A lot of people would dispute that and say that this is they have lost control, and they are everything they're winging it as they go along. So you are saying that that is not the case.
no, I'm what I'm saying is they the mess our financial world is in is not an accident. It's
Okay.
been done by
Yeah.
design.
Right.
The
Right.
globalists want to deindustrialize the Western world. The globalists, the likes of the Rockefellers, the likes of Maurice Strong, Zbigniew Brzezinski, these people have written white papers in decades gone by about their desire to deindustrialize the West, and basically, and to do it through the guise of environmentalism. I mean, these people have written about the demise of our global financial system. They wrote about it many decades ago, and now we're just starting to see the real fruits of their design. This has been the egg is now hatching. But these were seeds planted a long time ago, and it's very sad. It's a very sad thing that's occurring,
I
and
Sorry,
it's
I was going to give the example of Detroit as a place for deindustrialization. Man, looks like a war zone in certain parts there.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, look, we were commenting before we started recording, Paul, and we were talking. I'm gonna bring this up again. The province that we're in is Ontario, and 20 years ago, Ontario had the cheapest hydroelectric power in North America, and we could compete with anybody in the world in terms of attracting heavy industry because we had access to plentiful and cheap hydroelectric power. Well, the backbone of the Ontario electric grid was coal-produced hydropower, and the Ontario government, with the likes of Maurice Strong, who was inserted around about the year 2000, he was inserted as the chairman of Ontario Hydro. He hatched a plan to shutter all of our cheap power plants and replace them all with windmill farms that produce electricity at something like 15 times the cost. And so what that means going forward for Ontario, we're never going to be able to attract any large scale industry to this province ever again, because we no longer we can't compete on an energy basis. We can't provide economical power for anybody to build anything here. When you're producing, coal power plants used to produce electricity in Ontario at under 10 cents a unit. And that's all been largely replaced now by by windmill farms that are producing and subsidized at 70 cents a unit. Well, when you're a user of bulk electricity in a business, you can't pay 70 cents a unit for one of your major raw inputs when competing countries can produce it for 6 cents. I mean, and this has euchred us, and this was all done by design. This is what I was talking about when I said they planned the deindustrialization of the Western world, and they're doing the same thing all over America. They're shuttering coal-fired power plants that produce cheap electricity, and they're replacing them with expensive electricity. And for every coal-fired plant that we're shuttering in the West, China's opening 10 coal plants over there. So you see, these globalists, Paul, they have the other thing they wrote, years ago in their white papers when they talked about deindustrializing the West. They have a view, and they have such contempt for humanity. Their view of a model world is that we would all live in an environment modeled on Maoist China.
Wow.
And that's not exactly my bag of tea.
No,
I would like to think my children and my children's children would have something better to look forward to than living in Maoist China.
I was actually born and raised in India, and even that where I grew up, I would say is probably 100 times better than Maoist China, and certainly that is not something anybody should have to look forward to. And then there's things like Agenda 21, which they use as an excuse for rewilding and such programs that are in place, all coming out of the United Nations. That
exactly
right.
But I mean, the brokers, the architects of Agenda 21, were the likes of Maurice Strong, Zbigniew Brzezinski, that same clique of people. The Agenda 21 is part of the deindustrialization plan.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
One movie that has always struck in my mind has been Soylent Green. Especially the beginning of that movie, the first couple of minutes, what they had shown had happened was that basically this deindustrialization process had been completed. Everybody had been shoved into these mega cities, living in these shoebox, apartment buildings, condos, whatever you want to call them. And nobody was allowed to go into the rural areas. And it was essentially a prison world. And that's...
that's strangely, isn't it amazing how art imitates reality? Because that's exactly the direction we're headed in.
Yeah, I can see that happening, and I'm going, wow, that's it was it jolted me, and when I see that happening, then I go, whoa, man, maybe this is not fiction after all. Now, in regards to let's talk maybe a little bit about this Belgium bulge that I've been hearing about, about all this, how Belgium has suddenly become the the buyer of UST
Well,
bonds.
this is just a continuation of the Ponzi fiat money system. The Federal Reserve announced in December of 2013, finally, that they were going to begin tapering their bond purchases, and then uh, subsequent to December, they've added another 2 rounds of supposed taper, which is a reduction in outright Fed monetization of U.S. government debt. Um, uh, so as the Fed has claimed to be reducing their purchases, this little country Belgium, with a GDP of 480 billion, I think tops GDP, this little country in the last 3 reporting months has strapped on something like 350 billion dollars worth of U.S. government securities. So what this does, Paul, is it lays bare the fraud in the notion that the Fed is tapering. There hasn't been a taper. There never will be a taper because the U.S. money supply is in a critical terminal stage where it has to grow vertically. So there never will be a taper, and U.S. money will be created, and the bonds will be issued, and the Fed will continue to find hidey holes or proxies or fake or false accounts where they will try to inventory and warehouse these bonds that will be created. And right now, the flavor du jour, or their favorite little hiding place at the moment, is they're stacking them up in the Belgian account. So
Now this QE, of course, you're right that it is going to, this taper is a myth, and this QE is going to continue indefinitely until it won't. But the dollar is not just significant for Americans. It is, of course, used around the world, and to American people or us people living in Canada, it may not be apparent what is going on, but to people, especially those that make policy, and those people that have to bear the consequences of these policies, like in China and Russia and other places around the world, they surely are aware of it, and are they in the process of doing things to rid themselves of the yoke of the dollar?
yes, they are. Yes, I mean Russia, China, and the rest of the BRICS nations. They are all setting up. They are all planning and preparing now for a post U.S. dollar world. And I mean, we haven't done any of those kind of preparations here in Canada because we have weak leadership in our country that has tied our wagon to a bunch of criminal actors that are running the dollar centric system, and this will be problems for Canada down the road. But no, Russia and China, the Asian countries, the South American countries, they are absolutely getting on with the reality that America's run their financial ship up on the rocks, and they are actively engaged in preparing for a post dollar world now. We should be doing the same.
So, how far along do you think this process has already gone? Is this something that is years and years into the future, or are we talking near term where the dollar has already been abandoned to an extent and will be more actively abandoned in the coming days and months or years?
I think the status quo has a very very short time to live going forward, Paul. Uh, I think we're gonna. There's a very strong chance. I think we'll see some major dislocations in financial markets around the world before the end of the year. And exactly what the trigger is going to be for it. It's hard to say because there are so many of them out there, and there are issues. There are issues like in the Ukraine, and Russian gas goes through the Ukraine that supplies Europe. The Ukraine hasn't been paying for the gas that they've been using, or in arrears, and Russian gas suppliers vast sums of money for energy they've already used. There's talk that Russia may cut the gas off unless they're paid up, and Russia's actually asking the Ukraine that they'd like them to start paying in advance for gas they're going to use because they haven't paid for so much of what they've already taken. And this is a big issue. And then there's the wild cards of the political instability in the Middle East. There's the issues with Syria. There are the issues with Iran. There are we could just end up in a big war.
Even
And
in South Asia now with this, I've been reading lately about this Vietnam, China. They're having some major disputes developing down there. So everywhere there seem to be a lot of spark, plugs in place that can
yeah,
ignite at any
yeah,
moment in time.
exactly. So we're living in unprecedented times, and to say that I believe is an understatement.
So then, before we go, like, what do you see? Like, let's look into the let's have you take a look into the crystal ball. What do you see? Like you said, for the rest of the year, there's something major that you think could come down. Where do you see the world as financially, economically, even politically speaking? Say 2 years down the road or 5 years down the road.
Well, I would imagine 2 years down the road, if we were standing on a corner 2 years from now, I do believe that we would have already lived through probably a bank holiday, and we
Okay, can you
might very
define that for listeners who may not be familiar with what exactly is a bank
sure.
holiday?
A bank holiday is when you go to the ATM and you put your card in and you don't get any money, and you're cut off from access to your money.
So you have to take
And
a holiday from your own money, basically.
well, the holidays when the banks confiscate your money,
No, no, I was
and
okay.
so that's what the holiday really is all
Right,
about.
right.
And they'll call that a bail-in, and they'll say they're doing it for our good.
Of course, it's always done for our good, and then
Yeah,
a little bit further on down the road. So that is something that is major that really has not happened in the Western world. I guess since the days of FDR, about a bank holiday. So if that happens here, that really would be an earth-shattering event.
yeah, and all I can say is anybody who thinks it can't happen here, they are living in naivety, and they're in a dream, because with what's already been concocted and what's already occurred, this is an outcome that's virtually guaranteed.
Didn't I read somewhere? I read somewhere that it's already in the Canadian law. Bail-ins have already been written into law, so that
Yes, they were written into our last federal budget. Yes.
okay. So that template, it's the same, but they designed one template and then they applied all across the board to all the nations. So I'm sure what's being planned for Canada, Australia, New Zealand, England, whatever, it'll also apply to the U.S., the rest of Western
Oh
Europe.
yes, no, no. This language has been written into all like Western nations law now.
So then after, if something like that, an event like that transpires, then 5 years down the road, would you then say that we would be living in a totalitarian system when the system is broken down? Could there be like something like martial law, or would that be a natural
I think
consequence?
I think the odds of there being a martial law at some point in time is quite likely. But you know what? There's also the possibility that that people will rise up and throw the people who are currently running the ship, throw them out. And you know, regardless of what happens, Paul, one of the smartest things that anybody can do is probably own some physical metal, own some physical silver, some physical gold. You might want to think about having some non-perishable, storable food on hand, and you might want to think in terms of means to protect, or a place to retreat to that's safe if things get really, really, really silly. And you know what? And we're at a point now where things could get really, really silly in a hurry.
Well, those are quite sobering words there, Rob. And that you did preempt me because I was going to ask you about gold and silver, not just as a like means of protection, as you're talking about. As you know, the gold and silver have been brutally suppressed these past many years now. So, do you, let's say, the system sort of doesn't quite absolutely disintegrate, but it's kind of stumbles along. What do you think that the gold and silver, in dollar terms, are going to go substantially higher in the near future or in the long term even?
I think it's a guarantee that it will. And the reason gold has been and silver have been held down is we've seen a barrage of selling of promises of gold and promises of silver in what we would call the paper market. But increasingly around the world, people who are you know who want exposure to gold and silver are demanding the real thing. And at some point, the physical market will trump the paper market, and the paper market will be discredited and will fold. And then gold and silver ultimately will probably move to a cash and carry market. And I expect nominal prices to be many, many, many multiples of what it is today.
Now, as far as what do you make of this silver fix being shut down in London? Is there any significance to that?
Sure, there's significance to it. German regulators forced Deutsche Bank to exit that trade, and they couldn't find a buyer or couldn't find another dupe to stand in and do the job. So they've had to just shut it down. So yeah, the silver fix is going away, but I mean the silver fix was a contrivance anyway. So I just call it it's the one of the early stages or one of the early symptoms of the death of the paper system in metal.
Well, that's to me that seems like good news. So hopefully, it'll that trend will continue, and these the real price, the pricing mechanisms are so broken right now. So hopefully, the real pricing of real assets will, the inflated assets like real estate in Toronto will find its equilibrium, and the real value of gold and silver will also rise to where it should be, and that is certainly a hope. One last question, since you are, an expert in this subject, is the U.S. T-bond market a bubble?
Oh, absolutely. It's a it that is a it is a crime. The U.S. bond market, U.S. securities market is a crime scene. Full stop.
So, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate it in regards to the size of this bubble?
18.
Okay, okay. And what will be the consequences? So, it eventually every bubble does burst. So, when this one bursts, what do you think the consequences will be?
The United
For
States of
For the
America.
Americans and Canadians in particular, because we are joined at the hip, and I think it'll impact us worse than anybody else.
Well, the United States of America does not have a pleasant future, unfortunately, and uh, I have I have nothing pleasant to say about what's likely in the near future for the United States of America, and by extension, that's sort of foreboding for us. But I'd like to think Canada may fare a little better. Um for a host of reasons, different customs, different culture, um, and not as much firepower. So there you go.
And I guess Canada somewhat is also perceived as a safe haven for all the criminals around the world, like from China and Russia and all that. So we have found a lot of that money from down overseas has found its way here. And I don't know what the impact that'll have in the long run, but lately, I guess some of our prosperity definitely can be attributed to all this money to which our government turns a blind eye and lets in without any checks and balances.
Well, I mean, Canada, I think is pretty widely viewed as a good bug out place,
Right.
and animals don't tend to defecate in their own nest. So
Okay.
let's just hope we get lucky and it remains that way.
I hope so too. I hope so too, Rob. Rob, it's been a pleasure having you on. Before we go, can you please tell listeners about your website and what type of services you offer on there? I believe it's a subscription-based website, so please go ahead and give out that information out where they can contact you.
Yeah, no, you can find me on the web at kirbyanalytics.com, and there's a huge archive of material on the site, and I communicate with my subscribers by direct email. You know, whenever I feel compelled to write or to communicate, whenever I think I have something new to add.
Fantastic,
So,
fantastic, Rob. Thank you so much. And it's this is our first program together. Hopefully, we'll do lots more in the future. And I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
and pleasure meeting you, Paul, and I look forward to talking with you again.
Okay, have a great day. We'll talk soon.
Hassled in my mind, the borders of morality have shifted with the times, and I know something's wrong. I can feel it in my song. Open your eyes, can't you see that the world isn't right? Open your eyes, can't you see that you're standing in the night? And the time is right for the light. After day, I live for the best, not worrying about tomorrow. I could care less, and I know something's wrong. I can feel it in my song. Open your eyes, can't you see that the world isn't right? I said, open your eyes, can't you see that you're standing in the night? And the time is right for the light. And the time is right for the light.